Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back. So today's video I'm going to show you how to draw some profiles. So we'll go ahead and do a male and a female profile. And there's a couple ways you can do it. You can start off with a circle, or you can start off with just a line. And let's see here. If we just do a line and a line at the top and at the bottom. And so basically there's the height of the head. And then if we mark center here, and then center again, and then this last portion, let's just cut that into thirds. And keep in mind that these aren't perfect guides, that these are just ranges to get you in the area of what you're going to place. So on the front here, I like to draw kind of the curvature of the face. And about right here is where I start to think, okay, is this a male or a female? Let's go ahead and say this is a female. And let's divide the overall shape into halves with the line that we made there. And then let's go ahead and bring the jawline up, and then behind there we'll place the ear. So there's a lot of different ways that I've seen this structuring done, and I think it's kind of just something that changes as you become more comfortable with your drawing and then also your style. So if you're doing a realistic depiction of a character, then that's going to obviously have a little bit different proportions and incremental changes to what you're doing than than the alternative. So it's just basically what you're doing, what you're into. So for me, it's more stylized. So I just tend to use these more as a loose guide to do whatever style I'm trying to do. And you'll notice I kind of change things as I'm going. So if I feel like the ear is placed back too far, then I'll move that around and things like that. I might change the shape of the back of the neck and the curvature of the neck, things like that. Okay, so roughly from here down, and maybe I think it looks a little low. Let's bring it up just a little bit. I'll do the curvature of the nose, and I'll finish the nose right about there. Now, the other thing that I always notice is a relationship line kind of like this from the lips and the nose, the way it kind of bends down. So the lower lip might be tucked back just a little bit, like that. And I always try to make sure that the upper lip is tighter to the nose and that there's a larger space from the bottom lip and the chin area, so that the mouth is just a bit higher. It's not, I used to draw it kind of center to this mark, so from this mark down center, and that's not really the way that it is, I think. So I'll go ahead and place that to about here and get the mouth shape in there, maybe a little shadow under the bottom lip, something like that. The nostrils, and you can draw the plane change from the nose like that, and then maybe shape the nose a little bit differently, kind of play with that, since noses have pretty distinct, or they're not just a little sweep and a pull down. I mean, for a stylized rendering you can do that, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you study noses, they have a lot of different little curvatures and bends in there. Okay, so now for the eye. Generally the eye is that center mark that we made here, a little bit lower right here, and I would say that the eye sits a little bit lower than that, and also back from the nose mouth relationship, so back here somewhere. And you could start off with this kind of wedge shape, but just try to give it a little bit of curvature, because it's not just a little piece of pie. It looks like a little piece of pizza pie right there. It's obviously more rounded, and it's going to show some curvature bending around the face, so try to think about that when you draw it in. For stylized renderings like I'm doing here, I'll do the big overly accentuated eyelashes, so I'll kind of get crazy with those. I usually have it bend back this way too, but this is all style choices. So the pupil here, the glare on the side of the eye, whatever. So I'll play around with that, and to get it to not look so much like that pie shape, I just would bring this down more where it curves in more. So just little hints like that to show more curvature in it. And also keep in mind that at this stage, and keep in mind the ear has like this Y thing right here, just so you know, that what was I getting at? I distracted myself with the ear. The ear is always a complex thing for me to draw. This is just the rough lines. So as I'm drawing, I don't think about this being so entirely accurate and and right from the first get-go. So just remember that. I mean, I know that goes without saying a bit when it comes to drawing stuff like this, but I think so many people get in the habit of drawing something and just wanting to say that it's got to be perfect from the start, and it really doesn't. So right here we'll mark this into thirds, and that's roughly where the brow will go. And you see I'm just kind of loosely throwing this stuff in there. So say the brow comes back like this. I guess that gives her a little bit of a big forehead. So let's lower that down just a little bit. And I think the brow comes back like this or something, somewhere in there. I think there's less of pronounced shape right here. That's more of a male feature. And also, just remember that if you're doing this stuff, even if you're working on stylized characters, it's okay to just pull from reference for things like that. Like if I start to wonder what a certain thing looks like in that area, then pull from reference at least just to kind of rein those features in, and then stylize and get rid of them or do whatever you want to do at the end result. But it's kind of nice to know that. Like this Y feature that you get in the ear, it doesn't have to be like that. A lot of times I'll do ears as simply as something like that for a stylized representation. It's quicker. It still looks somewhat like an ear, but it's not entirely correct. So that's where certain things that you'll have to either forget about as you're stylizing your work, or if you want to really make it work and just keep practicing it, you'll eventually make a style that looks realistic and stylized, kind of mixed together. So I'm picturing that her hair is pulled back. That's why I'm doing these little directional lines, and I'll actually move this down just a bit. And then we'll do the flip of the hair, the hair pulled back into some kind of little scrunchy thing or whatever those are called. And hair tie, I guess. And then drop this down like this. For a stylized rendering, I like to do like these little, almost like spikes. It's like heaven forbid anybody's hair was actually that sharp, it would be deadly. But again, I like, just giving a little bit of style and what I think would look cool in the design. So that's what that is. Maybe a couple little flips of hair up here or whatever. So these are all style choices, really. And, the neck, you want to get a little bit of hint of that, whatever that thing is. Jugular? No, I don't know what that is. Okay, so now let's go ahead and soft erase this down. And again, this is just, the stepping stone to the next part. So I'll soft erase generally pretty far down, and then I'll just try to come back and clean it up a bit. And I always think about when I'm going to this next stage of the drawing, how can I improve on the drawing every time I touch it? So if I come back and I add something, how can I make it a little bit better, fix any mistakes that I saw from the previous step? Another way to think about it, especially when working in comics, is if you were to hand this off to another artist, whether it be an inker, even editors would give feedback and tell you where there's glaring mistakes, things like that. But if you were to hand this off to, say, the next artist, an inker, they would do their best to bring it out and make it more pronounced and add something that really helped propel it to another level of greatness or whatever. So essentially, if you can think that way, even about your own art, I think it's beneficial. I think that it allows you to look at the work more objectively and just really think about, if this wasn't my work, how would I really improve upon it each time I add something new, so that you don't stagnate and get in the habit of just doing the same steps over and over again. So try that. Maybe that'll work for you. That's definitely something I think about when doing this type of work. See, I'm just slowly moving things around because even this hairline effect just doesn't look right. But I'll just go with it because I'm not going to pull reference right here. But if at the end of the drawing it wasn't looking correct, then I would definitely pull from reference. So that's another thing. Don't ever feel like reference is a bad thing. It's far from it. So I want to show a little bit more curvature from the eye, because realistically, even from a side perspective, you sometimes get like even the inside tear duct on the front of the eye like that. It's not just flat and rounded right there. But for stylized, we'll just go ahead and go with this. And we'll get some of this top eyelid in there. And notice too, what I'm trying to do is start to do a little bit more separation in the line work, not just trace everything out. So little line gaps in your work kind of give a bit more style and effect to it. So try to do that when you can. These eyebrows are a touch heavy, but hey, it happens, folks. I've seen some pretty thick eyebrows on women. None I've dated, but they exist. Okay, so there's the eye. The nostril. And again, that plane change of the nose, which that was kind of poorly executed, but we'll just throw that in there. A little bulge from the side of the lips to the cheek, shadow into the jaw. So just little things. And I try to not add a whole lot of details to a girl's face, because the more details you add, the more aged they're going to look. And it's just another way to show feminine to masculinity to your work. So essentially, whenever you're drawing the women, just put in less lines overall, musculature, facial, whatever. And then when you draw the males, you can kind of go crazy with your style and rendering and all that fun stuff. And you'll get away with it a bit more. It just kind of shows that difference from the weathered kind of tough look versus the soft, sensual features of a woman. Okay, so, and again, I'm just going to go with the cheating ear that I do. It's kind of incorrect, but sue me. We don't have anything to compare it to. That's an ear. Okay. And then the hair on the back of the neck, I usually do like these little tiny flips here. Something. And then the hair, it's got to look like it's getting pulled up. So we'll do some strands. Or good thing to remember with hair, even though this isn't a hair tutorial, but I've got some on that particular topic if you need them. Essentially, the hair, you should try to do as much separation again in the line work and get in overall shapes, and then come back and detail with kind of more line weight and get in some of the heavier shapes of shadows. So it takes a little bit of practice to get in the habit of doing that, but it's you just really want to refrain from drawing like strands. You know, even these little shapes here, those were just guides. They weren't me trying to draw every little hair. And then making sure to use these shapes of shadows with gaps to define the texture of the hair. So study any of your favorite comic book artists. If they're published artists, they've figured that part out. One that I like, one that I think just does the most awesome hair is Dale Keown. I always feel like I'm slaughtering his name, but anyways, he does awesome hair. It's like just the way he does the negative drawing of it and everything is just dead on, in my opinion. So study his hair, so to speak. All right, so and trying to get some line weight in there as I'm doing these funky shapes that probably don't really resemble hair that much, but it'll work for now. Alright, and I'm not going to try to refine the hair too much because I actually spend a little bit of time. I'll usually do 2 to 3 soft erases to get hair just right, but I'll give you a few segues to it like this, and then we'll move on because I want to do 2 profile shots for you, male and female. So something like that. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and scale it down, see what it looks like. That's another thing I like to do to check my work. So the thing that tells me when it's smaller, line weight's still weak on the face. The face shape and the jawline's a little weird, but whatever. You know, it's not going to be perfection because it seems like every time I explain something as I'm drawing it, it's a little less refined. I'm taking some of the brain cells that I would use for drawing, and I'm talking with them. So they, you know, those 5 brain cells have to divide and conquer, you know. So, all right, so let's shrink her down, or you know, I'll give a little bit of line weight to the face, because this is the part. I think this is so important when drawing, is getting line weights just right. And I still have a long ways to go with the way that I'd like to see mine, but it really helps to give more effect to your artwork. So one artist that I remember watching, I think it was Todd McFarlane in a video series, and he said, put the thicker line weight on the curvature of the line, on the curved part of the lines, and then thin it out on the straightaways, or something like that. I always thought it was more to the shadow side, so maybe mix those two concepts, but that guy draws pretty darn well, so you can probably trust what he says. Okay, so now for the male face, and we'll point it the other way. Reason being is I try to always mix things up as much as possible. These are obviously just profiles, so they're nothing spectacular, but the more you can mix up, you know, the things that you do, angled faces and tilt down, tilt up, eyes wide open, eyes squinted, all these things, the more that your comics will become easier to draw, that you'll have more confidence with what you're doing. So you just really want to play around with a multitude of scenarios there. Okay, so now, you know, you see I drew the line first that time, not the circle. It really doesn't matter. Again, just think of this more as a way to get the ball rolling, you know. So this is going to be a male face, so I'm immediately going to think more angular and squared off, larger jawline. And keep in mind, this isn't really the back of the head. This is just a guide to draw the back of the head. The back of the head, depending on the character, can be shorter up here. It can be wider back, you know, this way. It just really depends on the character. These are just simply guides and templates to get your mind going and get things lined up somewhat. So, all right. So now again, I want the ear to be back here at the back of the jawline. So based on wherever the jawline is, generally the jaw will come up and connect to the ear like this. So just keep that in mind for a reference point. And we know that the eyes are roughly going to be here, so we'll bring this ridge line of the brow in, bring the nose out like this. Again, I'm thinking a bit more angular. There's still that relationship from the nose to the chin like this. We'll get that in there. You know, depending on how tough we want this guy to look, you know, we'll give him a bigger jawline. If we want him looking more super, you know, Superman's always got that big jawline. You know, we'll give him a little bit of the top eyelid, not as much, I guess. I always tend to want to draw the females with larger weighted eyes. I think it looks cooler. And then with the males, I always give them a thicker eyebrow or whatever. So I'll just draw that in real, you know, just real messy and just kind of get it into place like that. The nostril, that side of the lip. Again, I'll change the curvature of this eyelid just a little bit so it doesn't look so flat, so much like a pizza pie. God, I'm getting hungry. The mere mention of pizza makes me hungry. Okay, so there's the ear. You know, and just the thing I think about when drawing the ear, like I said, you can do that Y thing, but you see I ditched it on the other one, is that there's a circular shape, that edge of the ear that goes around. There's the earlobe that does this kind of bump right there. There's a tiny little bump here. And there's actually a little bend that goes inward this way, or into the ear like this. But again, for stylized ears, I just kind of ignore some of that. It's good to know that information, but just getting some of those major shapes in there just to kind of represent it. And actually, that ear is pretty big. Jeez, what am I doing here? But see, I ignored that line. That's why. So I just kind of drew the shape in there, and the relationship from the, the eye and the nose. So it should be down like this. I think tilted back. And And I think they got the jawline just too far back as well, so I'm going to adjust that also. Let's try that. Let's just shrink that in and bring it forward just a little bit. So that's something I'm constantly doing when I'm drawing stuff like this. I'm always moving stuff around. Again, if we take the line from here and we divide it into thirds roughly, it'll give us our brow. I think the brow should be just a tiny bit lower right here. And let's just give them, I don't know, some kind of flipped up, scraggly, or flowing hair. I don't know, just some hair going back. And so the first thing I'll usually do is draw in the shape of the hairline like this, like so. That neck's looking like it's way too far back, so I'll bring this head shape in and the neckline to here, erase that back. Yeah, it looks a little more correct. And I just keep nudging the artwork around until I get something that I think looks cool. I mean, it's less than perfect, but it's really, I think, a necessity to honing your style, because there's just so many ways that you could draw this stuff, you know. So there's really no right or wrong way, as much as just maybe a system of doing your way so that you can be consistent with your drawing. You know, the main thing is you just got to remember continuity. You know, if you're going to draw a book and this is your hero character, you want them to look pretty much the same page to page. So these templates will allow you to do that. You know, it's like one of the things that I do if I'm going to create a character and draw this character throughout my book or whatever, is basically the first thing I will do will be draw a profile and a front shot of this character. And then I'll pin that to the wall if I'm going to work on the book, because that to me is my reference sheet. And I'll do more than just that usually, but that's my starting point. I always start with a profile because they're the easiest to draw, and it's just the gauge to do all the other poses. And then I'll try, you know, my front shots, angle shots, all that stuff, and then I'll get into expressions and things like that. So let me soft erase this down like so. And just remember that, you know, when you're doing this part, just erase the things that are the most incorrect about the drawing. Erase those back the most, and the things that are already looking good, erase those back the least. And I'm sorry, I know that's pretty, that probably goes without saying, like a lot of the things that I mentioned. But I just like to be as specific as possible, you know, so I don't miss anything, I guess. But so I want the jawline to be a little bit more hero-esque, so maybe I just nudge that line down a little bit, you know, and you'd be amazed at what you can get across by just moving the lines ever so slightly, bumping up the line weight to certain areas. It's not always a necessity to really make drastic changes to your art. I think subtlety is everything when it comes to art. I know it's everything when it comes to painting. Like, you know, if you paint things very subtle in your work, it gets noticed. You don't have to make these extreme changes all the time. So actually just increase the size of the brow. The other thing I do is I tend to give the females obviously more pronounced definition in the eyes than the males, so I won't give him the big thick eyelashes obviously. And then the eyebrow. So now I'll try to shape it a bit more. I always do like these weird little points because I'm kooky like that. Just something I like to do. And the nostril. Again, you can get in that plane change. This isn't a very detailed rendering where it really needs it, but you can hint to those things. So yeah, just little lines here and there to kind of define some details of the face. And, you know, you notice I'm okay with adding extra lines to his face where I made sure not to over there with hers. When in doubt, erase them back. But just for some reason that it seems to work better on the male face. But if I keep going, I'm going to start making them look older, you know, real quick. So you got to balance that out. All right, so the ear. So yeah, so the beauty of doing this is it just gives you the confidence to go in there and start drawing in your other shapes and not worry so much. you've got enough of that information down where you kind of know where the drawing's heading, and that's it. It's pretty easy from this point. And then again, with the hair, you want to try to think of this in larger shapes and do as much gaps as you're drawing it, so you get like these little flips of hair like this or whatever. You get like a couple shapes of shadow, but I'm trying to separate as I go. I'm not drawing everything side by side like this. So I think that's really important to getting a nice look for the hair. Which, don't get me wrong, I still got a long ways to go on drawing my hair, because it's just a tricky thing to get right. And that's why I think it's so evident when you see a really great artist, like David Finch or Jim Lee or whoever, the greats. They do it so well and effortlessly, when you see them do it. But it's it's that conditioning that they've not conditioner. It's not the conditioner in the hair. It's the conditioning that they did to be able to see those shapes and draw it so well. I tell you, I'd really like to see their beginning drawings. Like, where's the stuff at when they were like 15? I want to see that. Maybe I don't, though. Maybe if it was just so amazing right from the start, I don't want to see that. All right, so here I'm just getting in some of the texture lines, like so. Again, doing lots of little gaps there, because I always feel like this part, I don't even know where I want the shapes to go yet. So I do those light little lines, and then I just kind of come back with the larger shapes of shadow and texture it a little bit more. And again, like I said, with the female's hair, I might do this a couple times to get it going, to get it right. So don't think this is my final rendition of the hair. I just want to show you how I would move forward on it. And then, you can get in here and do like shadows under the ear, shadows under the jawline. Always is a quick way to convey depth. Like that. And a nice heavier line under the jaw. Make that more pronounced. Drop shadow on the eye. Little things like that. And then I can get in and start doing more rendering lines, if I need to. And then, what else? Let's go ahead and shrink this one down, see what glaring mistakes I see, because it's not a perfect, his dome's a bit oddly shaped. So I guess what I would do there, for an oddly shaped dome, see if I can adjust this. Be nice. Not that way. Try it again. It might be the overly square. Yeah, you know what it is. It's as far it is a bit large, but it's the overly squareness of the. Let's try right here. But yeah, I think what's bugging me is this part. Let's try to fix that. Let's try to round that out a bit more. But this is back to what I was saying about always making changes. It's not always going to come out perfect from your first rendition, but it'll get you started, and then you can kind of incrementally make changes. I think the nose looks a bit weird too, so I'll probably adjust that as well. But that's essentially how I would do a profile. Not the greatest profiles, but it does get the job done and started, and then you go from there and just keep laboring away till you get it right. So if this video has been helpful, please let me know. Be sure to share the videos when you can. It helps me progress the channel. And also let me know what you'd like to see in the future, because I always take note of that, and that's what I try to bring you in the future. So again, I thank you for stopping by and watching. Keep drawing, keep having fun, and I will talk to you soon.